Good to see you all again. Remember, quiz number 3 is due tomorrow. Yes? Quiz number 3, please, if you haven't done it. It's announcement number 1. Announcement number 2, I'll have hard copy for you on Tuesday because I screwed up printing it out. For some reason, I kept confusing the courses and printing it out. I printed it all on one piece of paper on both sides, one for one class and one for the other one. So not only is it confusing, but it's wrong. So I have to do that, redo it, so I apologize. I'll have it on Tuesday. St. Kateri Tekakwitha, it's Native American Heritage Month. So I'm talking about Native Americans, Catholics, who are on their way to sainthood. In her case, she's not on her way, she is a saint, St. Kateri Tekakwitha. Kateri is another form of Catherine in her native language, Catherine Tekakwitha. And she lived sometime around she was born sometime around 1656. Sometime around 1656, and she died in 1680. Yes, Mr. Jastrzemski, and she was born and raised and lived in what is now the modern state of New York, which is part of the United States. Hence, as per my principle from Hispanic Heritage Month, good enough for me. She's an American. She's within our borders now, so I think we can claim her. Her name, Tekakwitha, means she who bumps into things. She who bumps into stuff. So I guess she was clumsy. So I guess she's the patroness of clumsiness. So if you're clumsy too, then you can pray to Saint Kateri Tekakwitha to help you with your clumsiness, or at least she'll sympathize. Anyways, she was an Algonquin Mohawk Indian, or Native American, or Indigene, whatever word you want to use. My niece is Mohawk Indian, so they're related in some way. And Saint Kateri was the daughter of a chief, one of the Mohawk chiefs. So, from an important family. Her dad was an important dude, which, of course, would make her important within the community. I would imagine at some time in her life, there was a smallpox epidemic. I know it's a plague, it's like a virus or a bacterium or something. I don't know what it does, but anyways, it can kill people, obviously. So it's not a good thing to get. But apparently it also can scar the skin. I guess you get sores or something in the skin that heal as wounds and scabs. So her whole face was scarred from having gotten smallpox earlier in her life, and I guess it also affected her eyes. Maybe that's why she was given the name Tekakwitha, she who bumps into things, because she couldn't see very well, I'm assuming. But anyways, maybe I read that somewhere. Around 19 years of age, she decided to become a Christian. She came into contact with some Christian missionaries, Jesuits, the Society of Jesus, who were ministering in, I believe it's northern New York where she was. And she was not Christian, nor was her family or anyone in her tribe, apparently. And she heard of the message of Christianity, and she wanted to convert, so she did. Which was rather weird, in tribal society, you're either in or you're out, and if you're in, then you do what the tribe tells you to do and expects of you. There's no real room for weirdness in tribal societies. Yes, when there are weird people, they try to make some accommodation. Maybe if a person's kind of nuts, they'll make him the local shaman or something, because he's always talking to himself and talking to other people. He says he hears voices, I guess those are the spirits, so make him the shaman, give him a job to do, But usually, you did what you were supposed to, as with Kateri, accepting this foreign belief system was unusual. And she also took a vow of virginity. So she took a vow to remain unmarried for the rest of her life. That's very unusual in a lot of cultures because, you're expected to procreate, to expand the group, okay? Add to the group. So there are more people in the group, more mouths to feed, but also more shoulders to bear the burdens of the group too. So that was a weird thing. That didn't endear her to her fellow Mohawk Indians who thought she was a witch. She was some kind of witch. And so she had to leave. And so, like with she went to a Jesuit mission that had been established. And as I said, with the mission system, it has a bad rap nowadays, especially among a lot of Native Americans. And, rightly so. I'm not saying that they were always treated well at the missions. But as, I told you with St. Juniper Serra, God bless you, who established missions in California and other places. The Franciscans did this. In Florida, we'll talk about when we get to the Florida martyrs. But yeah, they established places of safety, not just safety for the missionaries, so the local Indians wouldn't kill them, but they also wouldn't kill anyone who converted to Christianity. So she had, for her safety, she decided to move to the mission. And she just lived, a holy life, a good woman, did penances and things as saints are wont to do. She slept on a bed of thorns, which was, I'm sure, uncomfortable. Why did she do it? Well, she was offering up her suffering and prayer for the conversion of her relatives, that her father and mother and brothers and sisters would also become Christians. I don't know if they ever did, but that's what she did. And then she died, just died a natural death, as far as I know. Nothing spectacular about her death. She died. Her last words are reported to have been, "Jesus, Mary, I love you," which I think is beautiful. And a miracle occurred because all the scars that were all over her face from smallpox that she had throughout a lot of her life disappeared suddenly. Her skin became like just perfect skin, like it should be. They just disappeared. Anyway, so people took that as an indication of God's favor on her. This is a picture painted of her by one of the Jesuit priests, Claude Cochetier, around 1696. So it's not long after she lived. I think he knew her. So this might not be too far off to what she did look like. Okay, at least ideally, maybe after her death, because here she's kind of pretty. She's not all scarred, and not that she wasn't pretty with her scars. I mean, I didn't see the woman. I'm just saying, she doesn't seem to have a scarred face here. Well, whatever. Anyways, so take it for what it's worth. I never knew her, but this guy apparently did do this and painted this picture of her, which might be close to what she looked like. Anyways, 1885. So 1885. It was until her process was opened. It's a long time. And then it wasn't until 2012 that she was canonized a saint by Pope Benedict XVI. So about, 13 years ago. So she's finally a saint. She languished at blessed for like a long, long time. And finally they recognized her as a saint. Yeah, so I asked for her prayers for us in this class. And especially anyone of Native American descent and all Native Americans in our country, that they may be blessed by God. Okay. Yeah, I was driving home last week and I remembered, when I talked about Marcion and the second treatise of the great Seth, yeah? And I told you those stories, from the infancy gospel, I think it's of James, about Jesus killing a kid who ran into him, right, Mr. Wojciechowski? It occurred to me that, Ms. Snyder was not here on that day. So I was, I knew I said it. But I'm silly me. I'm asking a person who couldn't vouch for it, Watch the class lecture. It's on YouTube. So make sure you do that. So at least you have the information, or get the notes from somebody, so that you have the information, because it might show up on a quiz question. But for those of you who sat here and let me swing in the wind while I was asking, didn't I talk about this? Miss Kelsey, Miss Taylor, Mr. Jastrzemski. God bless you all. God bless you all. And other people I'm not naming. All right. Sources of authority. Where are we here? Oh, I was on this. Okay. I think I got to conscience, and then I stopped. Conscience is that little voice that is not you guys talking about themselves, but anyway, that little voice, we call it the voice of conscience, but that, I guess, perception or intuition that doesn't necessarily come from us, that tells us what to do, especially on moral or ethical things. Is this the right thing to do, the right way to go, the right path to take? Is this the wrong path to take, wrong thing to do? Okay? You can think about it, but, you know, you can still think about something and be indecisive, right? You know, still not sure. You can maybe see both ways. You do this, there are all sorts of consequences. What I call do that, and there are other consequences. Some I'm okay with, but others I'm not with either. You know, so what do I do? Or you might even ask the ultimate question: is this the proper thing to do to begin with? It's a question of ethics. You know, I can do it, but you know, should I do it? Is it, you know, I have ability, but I have the power? Should I exercise that power? The right thing is ethical. Morality looks more towards the innate goodness or badness of an action. Yeah, I can do something, but I should never do it because to do it is always destructive to myself. It's always destructive to my humanity, my human nature. You know, I can still do it, but it ruins something within me as a human being. It's evil. It's bad. Okay? Sometimes you don't know, but you have a feeling, right? Maybe for a lot of people, that's the way I don't know, because I'm only in my head with my conscience. I know it's there, and it's not me. Some people would say it's the voice of God. But whatever it is, there is something there that tries to direct me in certain ways. Like, no, Matt, you got to do this. Well, I'm going to do this anyways. And it doesn't stop me from doing it, but if I do something that it's like telling me not to do or giving me this feeling that I shouldn't do, because it's wrong or improper or whatever, I feel bad, you know? It bothers me. And we expect that, right? You know, a person, you know, if you go to talk to someone in jail who's in prison for murder and like, doesn't it bother you what you did? You know? Or it doesn't bother this guy at all. That's one of the problems. I got you, Mr. Gaffney, Mr. Barnett. Give me 1 second here. Finish my thought. That's one of the problems. Those of you who are doing social work or psychology, and you have to take abnormal psychology, right? Well, the indications of like a psychopath or sociopath. They have no empathy, and they can't predict punishment in a way. I think that's how they put it. No, they don't put it that way. They have no, not tolerance is the word. Well, prediction, I guess. They have no sense that they'll get punished for doing something. And they can't empathize with the victim, you know? So we have reporters and people, documentaries have run into, sometimes I've seen some of these on YouTube or whatever, interview serial killers. They're looking for like, you know, what did you think when you were doing this person, this woman or this man or whatever? Doesn't it bother you? What did you think about your victim? A lot of times it's just blank. Yes, Mr. Barnett.
I was going to say, my last class, we were talking about the ethics of moral history.
Which class was this?
Education.
Education? Oh yeah, for little kids, right? We want to teach little kids.
Yes.
God bless you, sir. Stay. That's where it is. Stay there. Stay with the little kids, people. Not go to high school. That's the seventh circle of hell. And all the teenagers that you're teaching, they're the guardians of the gate. I'm just saying. They're the ones who let you in and never let you out. Am I lying? You were there. Okay, excellent, sir. So some people don't seem to have that little voice. Maybe I could call it empathy instead of conscience. do unto others. You know, how would I feel if someone, did that to me, did some bad thing to me? How would I feel? Some people don't care. They don't seem to have a conscience. They don't feel bad about it. It doesn't make them feel bad when they killed someone or tortured someone. But I think most people have this, and it's not from me. I didn't get it. I didn't give it to myself. Say, well, it comes from your parents. All right, but then we can play the game of let's go back. Well, where did they get it from? Where did this come just from our genetics, our DNA? Where it's coming from? All right. Well, why does our genetics favor certain actions over other actions? Animals have genes too, and they kill. Don't seem to have any morality about killing or not killing or ethics about it. So why do we have so many rules attached to something like that? Anyways, so we have something that tells us what's right and wrong, and we like to do the right thing. I think we might do things that are wrong, but we long for the infinite. No end is that what it means? Is what it means. In means no. Finis is end. We want things to go on, hopefully forever. We long for that and for happiness, hopefully everlasting. If it's everlasting happiness and not everlasting pain. It's like, yeah, you could go on forever. They could find some way to really slow down aging in our genes or in our cells so that we could extend our life by 50, 100, maybe hundreds of years and stuff like that. But the machines we're still a machine, and machines get old and they still break down and they need maintenance. That it doesn't change that fact. There's an old myth, I think it's a Greek myth, I forget the guy's name, but who got a promise from one of the gods that he would never die. So the gods are fine. You have eternal life. You're immortal like the gods. You won't ever die. What the god didn't tell him was that it didn't mean he wouldn't ever age. So according to the myth, this guy was like, if you ever encountered him, was this massive wrinkles and pain. The Greeks really knew how to tell a story. Usually with the gods and stuff like that, things don't work out well, at least not for the humans. Anyways, so yeah, think about that. If we could scientifically somehow manipulate our genome that, it would really slow down, even stop our body from aging, that doesn't stop pain. That doesn't do anything to our pain receptors. We're still going to have those. We could still break bones. We can still get stabbed or shot or fall off a cliff, We can still have a whole bunch of things happen to us. We can still die. But we don't want it to end. And for me, the biggest evidence of that is Hollywood. Look at Hollywood. Got movie upon movie about what the future is going to be like. Why? Obviously, no one knows. They can't possibly know. So why are they even imagining what the future would be like? Like somehow we're there in 25, and, the gorillas have taken over the planet, Planet of the Apes. It's real, Ms. Kelsey. It's going to happen. The chimpanzees are only one gene away from us. Once they get that extra gene, baby, all bets are off. Maybe we just like storytelling. But people also imagine, like, we kind of think, like, the way we act in our lives, we don't act like we're going to die or could die in the next moment. We act like we're going to live forever. Like, I wonder sometimes, like, what will I be reading? What will I be watching on television? What will I be involved in when I die? Like, what book might I be reading? And I'll be like, just starting it, and then boom, I die. Or I get into some show on television, or there's some movie that's going to come out. I'm waiting for it to come stream, at a cheap price. I'm not going to pay $20. I'll wait until they slash the price in a few months. And I keel over and die. It's over. I'm never going to get see the thing there. Well, I guess if I'm in the afterlife, I'll know. I'll have a expanded knowledge, I'm assuming. I don't even know if I'll care, you know. But anyway, well, we act like, you know, it's going to keep going on, even though we know it's not. We know it's not, right? That's the one definite thing we have in our life, because we see it all around us. Every one of us in this room is going to die. You know, the machine is going to stop working. Hopefully it stops working naturally. I pray God that, you know, it doesn't happen unnaturally to anyone in this room. And I also pray God that it happens to me before it happens to you. But maybe you've had people who in your life with a doctor. So you know it's not going to continue on forever. So why do we think or want the party to never end? Anyways, and we want happiness. Well, what's happiness? We want that to never end. We want to be happy. We don't want to be sad. So we have this longing for happiness. In these things, according to the Catechism, humans are questioning themselves about God's existence. They're already, in a way, whether they believe in God or not, encountering that question of, is there something else? Call it a God, call it ultimate, whatever. The force, I don't know, whatever name you want to give it. But is there something more than me that can give me these things? Because I can't give them to myself. I love beauty. I want to do, I love beauty, but, you can't always have it. I want truth, but people tell lies. I want to do the right thing, but I do the wrong thing. I want to be free, but I know I'm manipulated in so many ways. Okay? I really don't want to die and just not exist anymore. I would like to exist and see what's going on. Some people might not want to exist, but I think most people don't. It seems to be a common human desire. But I know that doesn't happen because, well, death. I want to be happy, but a lot of times life is not happy. It's miserable. And a lot of the times that the miserable parts I can't control. They just pop up, we saw something on the x-ray. Come in for a visit. Is there something that can do those things for me? Promise me truth and beauty. Promise me people will always do the right thing. Promise me that there'll be no suffering and misery forever, that will never end. A lot of people seem to ask that question. But why, when we know it's such a useless question? We know it's impossible, again, because of death, and that's the way the world is. Everything breaks, everything falls apart, everything dies. It's almost insane. Just accept the way the world is. Just accept the way the world is. But we don't. We're looking for something. And here the church says we're encountering the soul, which is that part of us that some might say is the God-sized hole in every heart. Every human heart has a hole in it, which only God, the only, I guess, object, like a little kid when you put the little square into the square or whatever, the circle into the circle, Miss Senior. That's God for us. We know that there's a physical material world. We know that we're physical material beings, but we don't seem to have just physical material desires. We seem to always want more than just the physical. Is there something beyond? Is there something out there? Even if it's just, the tall whites, the grays, and the lizard people. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? No. Well, you ever hear of Area 51? That's where apparently the tall whites were kept, and the grays, different types of aliens that have been visiting us, communicating with our government. Why, I don't know. I mean, they've been communicating for so long. Can't they come to a decision? What are they, Presbyterians? With all their committees and session meetings, and it's like, Anyway. So yeah, it's these things the church sees as having its origin in whatever you want to call it is a God. And I think that it's not a philosophy course, but if this were a philosophy course like on God, they do philosophy of God and stuff like that. That's where you get the person. Person can be the the capital A of atheists. The moment the person starts asking, why are things beautiful? Or why do I like certain things? Or why can't the world be this way? He's got him. They might not know his name, but he's already there. They're just not talking to him. Talk to him. Ask him why. Ask him why. Ask God why life sucks. He's this all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good, beneficent, loving God. Why is the world screwed up the way it is? Why do we screw it up the way it is? Ask him. Anyways, okay, experience. Do I want to do experience? Well, experience kind of ties into encounter, I guess. But I'm not sure if I can make it work. Reason and faith are not opposed. Yeah, I might skip over that. Let's see here. Just give me a moment, please. I guess it does tie into encounter. Another source of authority for us is our experience. Okay? We experience these things and we can share them with others. And what's one of the most common ways? Well, for most of human history, other than just telling, well, two ways really, telling people, going out and if you're motivated enough, go out and tell people, hey, I saw this is what happened, if you think it's really important that people should know. This seems to be like the beginnings for a lot of religions, the Buddha becomes enlightened and he thinks about just, since he had reached his goal, which was enlightenment, he reached his goal, so, he was in nirvana. There's no point for him to go any further. He was where he wanted to be or not be. Depending on because nirvana and nirvana things both are, they are not. They become, they unite. I'm a Christian, so I have a very concrete idea of the afterlife, Something, gotta be something there, Anyways, but, he was motivated to get up and start proclaiming what he learned, teaching other people. Jesus Christ, he grows up in a small village in Nowhereville, in the north of Palestine, which is a nowhere province in the Roman province. And he just shows up and starts preaching a message. Okay, he felt motivated to put away his carpenter's tools and to become now a religious person. Okay, Muhammad, the founder of Islam. No, Muslims say it's God. He's the founder of Islam. I'm not questioning that. I'm just saying, just go with it for now. He believed that he was seeing visions of God's revelation written on a stone in heaven. And that he just had to speak it out. He couldn't keep it within himself. He physically couldn't. He had to proclaim it. So orality, I think I've gone over this already. People tell. That's the most basic form of communication, an encounter. You encounter the person who says, I saw this happen. I've heard this person say these things, or I saw him or her do these things, and I can vouch for them. And if the person is trustworthy, or you think is trustworthy, is she? Okay. You have a movement. Start a movement. You also can lie for various reasons. And from their experience. So you have to be, skeptical, have a healthy skepticism, poke and probe what someone's trying to tell you. Why are they trying to tell you? Cui bono! Cui bono! It's one of to who's good? For whom is this good? Latin, cui. For of whom is this the benefit? Bono. Or to whom is this the benefit? And I might be mixing up my cases. I think it's genitive case. Cui, yes. And to whose advantage? So you got to ask that question as well. I think I'm telling you from my own experience. And you trust me. So maybe you'll do that. Okay, so experience. And looky right there, experior in Latin, which we get the word experience. It means to try something, to test it, to prove it. Okay? You know, I have my joke about, I have my big carafe of coffee, right? It smells sweet. I drink my coffee. Well, this column, most of the coffee. In this column, until it stops making me laugh, I'm going to say that joke all the time. All the time. Now, if Miss Colomby was like wondering, like, is he serious? Is he like putting a little bit of what are the little things, the little that you get from I see them thrown all over the place on the ground. Not shooters, but they're hot ball or fireball. Is fireball? Okay. Why would you know? How would you know? You people, you in general, not you, Miss Crystal. Why am I asking you? You're not 21. Yeah, fireball. Okay. But I mean, I put a little bit of bourbon or something in my coffee, a little alcohol or something like that. Or it could mean sugar. I mean, what makes it so funny is it's ambiguous. It's what may pop up into your head, That's mostly coffee. Could be mostly cream and sugar. Right, Miss Pearl? Anyways, but you have to. How do you find out? You prove it. Miss Colomika, I don't recommend this. You don't want my germs. But if she wanted to, taste it. Experience. This doesn't taste like there's anything. It just tastes like coffee. Now you verify through your experience. That's the scientific method. Once you have that, an hypothesis, and then you verify it with experience, you're already doing science. And modern science didn't figure this out. People have been doing this for a long, long time. Human beings have been doing. That's what makes us human, I think. That's what distinguishes us from the other animals. Okay? You don't know if something's hot, you touch it. You touch it. You feel it's hot, well, then you know. And in a similar situation, when you see something that looks like it or feels like it, you feel the heat, you can assume from your experience that it's hot and don't handle it, because you might get burned or something like that. But like my little kitten that we got, she's fascinated by our fake fireplace, when we're burning cans of fire and stuff like that. And she likes the way the flames move. Mom keeps yelling at her, get away, get away. Like, Mom, let her burn her paw. No, I'm just saying. When she burns her paw, she'll know to get away. I don't want her to be hurt, but I'm not always there, and I don't have a leash on her. So the little baby sticks her paw. She'll find out the hard way. Experience. That's a source of authority for me. Because, you run up against it all the time, especially religious questions. Go on YouTube and you'll find some Christian debating some atheist or some rationalist or secular humanist about the resurrection. Did Jesus really rise from the dead? One of the arguments that, you'll inevitably come up with or come against is, well, does that really happen? Is that part of human experience? I've never seen a person flat out die, be dead for several days, and then the person just reanimates, just comes right back to normal life. I mean, have you ever seen this, Christian? Well, no. But Jesus, All right. And I'm not going to get into that whole argument. I'm just saying that people use that argument. That means something to people, and it's in some way a valid argument, because is that our normal experience? And that people usually do that. Well, of course I could go on Google and search and see, are there instances where people have flat out died in an emergency room or something, been dead for several hours, or even if you want to push it like a day or something, and then resuscitated somehow. I don't know. You could search, do some of your own research. to see that it's not impossible, but it's still not normally impossible. It's not part of our experience. So we use it as an argument, but it's not an infallible guide. I mean, it can be right sometimes. Like if you tell a little kid, you don't even have to have the kid touch the fire, but mom or dad, when you see him reaching for the hot stove or something, I don't even know if they have hot stoves anymore with today's technology. I think they're all cool, right? To the touch. But anyways, in the old days, if you had a gas stove with the flame or an electric stove with the hot, burner, and the kid's reaching out, you say, don't touch that, because you already know from your experience. You pass that experiential knowledge onto another person who doesn't know it, but now knows it, that it's dangerous. And it's right. It's right. The kid did touch the flame, he or she would burn his or her hand, right? If the physics are normal, then, usually they are, you can trust the physics, then the fire will burn the kid's hand and cause damage. But the thing with experience is that it can be right, but it's not necessarily wrong, but it's also not necessarily right either. Because, of course, we all experience things in different ways. And this is a form of, I guess, encounter. That reality itself we can encounter God. If this world was made by a creator, we can encounter in some way the one who created it. Doesn't mean you know for sure, oh, there must be a God. Okay, there must be. All right. Some people are very sure about that. I probably am one of them. But nevertheless, I'm only 52. Maybe give me a few more decades, and who knows, I might become an old, bitter atheist. Who knows? I don't know. You never know. I hope not, but, You fooled me once too often, God of Israel. Anyways. But it is in some way a revelation to our human experience. How else can God relate to us? We're physical beings. We experience things. We have senses. We can tell people stuff. And for most of human history, other than telling people have written stuff down. They put it in writings permanently. Because people can't be present everywhere to tell everyone, right? That's just a physical impossibility. So what do? You write it down so there's some permanence, or you can make copies and you can send it off to other people, even people far away can read what your experience was, right? You're now encountering that person even though you're not there, but you're encountering them in their experience. Oh, good. I thought I was losing you. Thank you, Ms. Casada. God bless you. Wasn't sure, Ms. Tran. And that experience of that person can even be transferred across time. Right? Right? Yes. What's going on, Mr. Levidinsky? Not much. I'm sure you don't mean that, but not much. I'm up here sucking. Up here attacking. All right, Mr. Washington. To someone who wrote something from, even thousands of years ago, if it's preserved, like we looked at cuneiform, right? Saw the cuneiform somebody wrote down. We saw Servet El Qadim or whatever in the Sinai Peninsula, where someone chiseled in those letters, okay, in ancient Semitic, right? The earliest form of writing, one of the things. Okay? And if we can translate them, we can know it. We don't know who it was. We've now encountered an experience. We've now encountered them. We've gone into their experience. Even thousands of years later from the writing. Just the writing. So person's not there to tell us, not even alive anymore, tell us writing is still there. So it is an encounter between persons, Mr. Kistrins. Yes. Yes. God bless you. And not only is it an encounter, but it goes both ways, because I don't have the writer present. So now I have to bring my experience to what I'm reading of the writer. And if I don't have the same experience, whatever the writer writes, I might have no idea what the person's talking about. I just don't understand it. I might be able to understand the words, but, one time I tried to read an article about the anthropocentric principle that some physicists, an argument some physicists made in a famous article about how the physics of the universe and all of it seems to be all designed for the creation of human beings, the creation of intelligent life like us. And isn't that weird? I'm like, all right, that's interesting. I'd like to, hear the guy's argument. The guy's a physicist. Legit. Interesting. He might be useful. I got the article. Tracked down the article. Some of it was written in English. Most of it was in physics equations. Well, I knew that. I wasn't going to understand those. All these Greek symbols and whatnot. I knew that was happening. But I thought, I can read the parts that are in English, those bits, and kind of figure out what the guy's trying to say. Didn't understand a word of it. I'm like reading, he's using all this technical terminology, all these principles and hypotheses and blah, 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 blah. I don't know what it's saying. Unless I'm looking through it and like, no. Now I could take the time to go over every other word and search for it and see what it means. Not take forever. But I'll probably just honestly someone who understands it all and summarizes the argument. But yeah, I put that one away. But yeah, I had no experience. I've never taken physics, so I couldn't understand the equations. But I had no background even in the history of physics and all the ideas and hypotheses, stuff that's going on. I couldn't even understand the English words, the various theories and principles and stuff like that I've been studying. And I could have looked them up, but I just didn't want to. So yeah, now it's a two-way street. I'm bringing my experience. What does this have to do with sacred writing? Well, glad you asked, is the verse. Well, that's what's going on with sacred writing. Talking about the Bible especially. Bible. No, I would have chosen the other way. No. See. No, that part. No, one the other part. Play the other one. Nah. What did I say? Oh, sacred writing. We're talking about focusing on the Bible. Okay, why do people a lot of times run into speed bumps, we might say, with reading the Bible? Why is it not meaningful? Well, I guess one reason it may not be meaningful is because we don't share the experience of the authors. Okay? They're writing from you can see this, I guess, when you read Binns's book, and he talks about the formation of the Bible. We have to, we want to know the culture of the people to get a better understanding of where they're coming from, to understand, how they wrote things. It can inform us and expand our view so that we understand, oh, okay, I understand the biblical author is referring to this kind of practice or assuming this kind of cultural practice or something like that. Or it explains something that might trouble us, why would the Israelites engage in so many wars trying to kill off other people and stuff? And, if you look at the culture of the time and we understand what was the purpose of these things and how people thought about these things, and of course how they're different, their experience is different from how we think about such things now. We think about genocide, but genocide, even the word was only invented in I think the 1950s during the Nuremberg trials after World War II. The concept may have been there before, wiping out whole populations, but there wasn't a lot of real, I guess, awareness of it. I mean, it happened not just to the Jews, but you have the Armenian, what we call the Armenian genocide, which happened before World War II, to millions of Armenians killed in Turkey, Ukrainians killed by the Russians, of course, Native Americans, Native American Heritage Month, a lot of the Indian Wars. We helped deplete the numbers of the Native Americans within our territory. No one was saying using the word genocide or thinking that way. So, it doesn't make it right. I'm not justifying it in the Bible or what the Israelites did to other populations. But it informs my experience, whether I like it or not, whether I'm like, I don't like your experience. I'm glad I don't have that experience, or I don't want that experience. But I need to know it to then understand why it's there in the writing. It's helpful to know that. Like an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, Mr. McMaster, right? I mean, we usually take that saying as like revenge. You do this to me, I'm going to do something to you. You kill one of my own, I'll kill one of yours. Take something of mine, I'm going to take something of yours. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Stripe for a stripe, a wound for a wound. A hand for a hand, a foot for a foot. Usually it's called a law of retaliation. And because of our experience, we think we understand that, but actually, we don't understand it. Once we were able to start digging up archaeologically law texts from these ancient societies that were surrounding the Israelites, the Jews, see like what kind of laws people had. We saw this kind of idea coming up quite a bit. So the Bible didn't invent it. An eye for an eye, a wound for a wound, stuff like that. The Bible didn't invent it. And it helped contextualize us from the experience of whoever the ancient person who wrote down these laws. What this actually meant. And it wasn't revenge. Actually, it was the reverse of revenge. It was trying to limit vengeance. Because without this law, you do something to me, then I can do something to you. But what can I do to you? You knock out my tooth, but I cut off your hand. You kill a member of my tribe, so I wipe out your whole tribe. Okay, is that justice? Is that in the weights of justice? Are they equal? Not that people didn't think so. It should be an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. If I punch you and you lose a tooth, there's damage to you, then you have the right to expect the same from me. And if you damage my body in some way, then part of your body deserves to be damaged. But not more than that part. Cut off the hand if you damage my hand, not cut off the whole arm. Remove a tooth. Okay? And this wasn't always taken even literally. This could also be a lot of in the laws they be interpreted as paying a fine of some sort, giving money, physical money, or animals, which were, the equivalent of money in a lot of these societies. That would be due. You pay a fine for what was done to the other person. And then in some cases, yes, it would involve physical punishment. Like if you steal from someone, the just thing would be like to cut off your hand. Or if you kill someone, then you can be killed. Right? But you can be killed. Not one of your brothers or sisters. Right? Not your mom or dad. You can be killed. Justice. So it sounds like revenge, but we understand more now that it's talking about how to create justice. Now, it might not be the best form of justice. It might not be the justice I want to live with in modern America. But it was better than nothing that was there before, where each person got to decide for himself what he's going to exact from you if you injured him. Which might not be equivalent to how the injury was. You know what I'm saying? Experience. So we delve into the experience of the other. We bring our own experience, but our own experience, which can be right, can also be wrong. It can also be distortive, Mr. McMaster. It can maybe distort what we're reading. I personally think this happens all the time with the Bible. I got to be careful of it with myself. That's why we need Bible scholars. I should say we need Bible scholars, but I appreciate biblical scholarship. Much of it is wrong, but it's there. In my opinion. Because I think a lot of it's based on assumptions that we can't prove, but in theories, which can't be proven. But one thing I do think is that as much as we can get back to the original idea of the author. Remember this. This was a problem for Karen Armstrong, right? She's like, we don't have to go back to the original meaning. That's not what the sacred writings are for, to know the original meaning, what the original author intended when he or she wrote down the text, right? She argues against that. Doesn't matter what the original meaning is. It's what we do with it now. It's performative, how we're going to use it now, Okay, I get her point, but it would be nice to know if you're violating the intent of the originator of the text. In some cases, in many cases, you simply can't know. Because I wasn't there when the person was writing, I can't ask the person, right? That's what Plato said. That's why Plato didn't like writing, right? Remember? And he's like, a person speaking, you can interrogate the person, right? You can ask questions. What can you do with the dumb word, the mute word? You can't ask any questions of the author. Just there, So Plato didn't like it. Or Socrates, I should say Socrates. Okay, they're Phaedrus, right? They're from Phaedrus. Where are you going to? I don't know. I think it would be good to know. In some cases, if you can establish what the author really means. I mean, if the author of the Gospel of Mark or the Christian Gospels, the stories about Jesus, if they say that Jesus rose from the dead, what does the author mean by that? Because if he rose bodily from the dead, like he was really dead, well, that's another thing. Was he really dead? They mean dead in the sense that I would understand dead, like flatline in the heart and the brain and everything and whatever. Kaput. And if the author means that, then okay, if a person came back from that, well, that's kind of interesting. Could be world-changing. But if we find out from the experience of the author that rising from the dead simply meant that, Jesus' spirit or his memory continued on, or Jesus was spiritually kind of maybe glorified and taken up into heaven with God, where we're all going to go. Okay, well, it's good to know that as well, so you have it accurate. I mean, if you're going to base a religion on it with billions of people in it, it would be nice to, at least on that basis, know what the original author meant. Not decide 2,000 years later what we want it to mean. What makes sense to us. Because I think, and this is one of the problems I have with Armstrong's argument, I don't think it takes the sacred text seriously enough. This is a thing. She's written about religion before and religious violence and stuff like that. And one of the criticisms in book reviews was that she's very knowledgeable and she makes some good arguments, but it always seems like she always is opening a door for religion to have an out. Religion's it's never the fault of people of faith, certain wars or crimes or whatever. There's always a political motive or some cultural thing or some other reason why the people did it. They were never motivated by religion. Okay. That's her argument. But then, she was reacting against a lot of literature at the time, books and people talking who were ascribing every evil thing, just about every war, most wars, attributed to religious motives. So maybe she was trying to just, speaking of scales, balance the scale by going overboard, you know? It's kind of like, you know, when you're on, well, not on YouTube, but, well, yeah, like on YouTube and I see a video that has too many likes, too many thumbs up. I'm like, okay, you gotta decide. So I'm just saying, you know? You gotta balance the karma on this person. And not everybody can have 10 million thumbs up, you know, come on. You gotta have one person that brings some reality. That's me. What? Have you smiled yet today? Why not? Don't you just smile to smile, Miss Senior, Miss Taylor? Just smile to smile. Anyways, same thing with the gods. What your seraphim? You just smiled. Have you smiled yet today? No. All right. So bring it back here. Yeah, I did. Okay. All right. Anyway, where was I? What was I talking about? Oh yeah, the likes to this on YouTube. That and that. Gone by experience. What was they say? Lost my train of thought. Oh, you're balancing the scales with. Okay, but you know, so I think some people criticized her, and maybe rightly so. I read some of her books, some of the chapters I've been interested in. You know, rightly so. She may be a little too soft on religious violence and the motivations of people and why they were saying it, especially when they were saying they were doing things for religion. She kind of tried to maybe bring out, try to find all of their other reasons other than religious faith motives. Okay. And maybe she's trying to do that here because, you know, she talks about jihad, right? Holy war in her talk with Islam. And there are, you know, a number of verses in the Quran that talk about holy war and defensive battles against those who are attacking the religion. Okay. But I guess, you know, she thinks I don't know, I just get the impression she doesn't like that they're there, you know? Because I guess maybe they make her job a little bit harder when it's right there in the religious text, you know. It's talk about the Bible where God tells the Israelites, you know, go into the land of Canaan, kill all the Canaanites, men, women, and children. You know, take houses that you did not build. You know, take their vineyards that you did not plant. You know, it's all there for you. I'm giving it to you. People won't go willingly, kill them, all of them. You know. Okay. Yeah. I think that if I try to play this game of, well, what do I think the original author intended? Was the original author just telling a story? Like, this is what you should do. This is what they should have done, the Israelites, but really didn't happen in reality. Because from archaeological digs, we know that probably there was no conquest. There's more of a migration of the Israelites into the area than they mixed in with the local crowds. There's no evidence that this annihilation of cities and stuff like that. At least we don't think so. Okay, but you know, then again, archaeology is still a very young science. We may find evidence that proves the Bible. And I know some Baptist Christians will love that. See, it proves the story in the book of Joshua. This is what really happened. It's true. You know, the Israelites did do God's will of killing men and women and children. We did nothing else wrong than just live there. Hallelujah! You know, archaeology has proven the scriptures to be truthful. I'm not sure you want that kind of truth. Maybe you want to be able to say, maybe it's a mythology, maybe it's just a story. So some people try to say that, it's just a story. Just a story, someone's imagining of what should have happened, you know? Well, I mean, you still don't get aside from the fact that this person this inspired by God person is imagining annihilation of whole populations of people. Okay. And saying it's the word of God, that this is like God approves of this. This is what I want you to write. You know, this should have happened, you know? At some other time, maybe it will happen. I don't think you still kind of get out of that cage of the problem of the text. I think the original author meant, whether he meant it as a story or he was describing what he saw happen or he was told it happened, I think he meant that in the way that he tells it. I mean, I'm not saying all the details are historical. There might be stuff that's kind of made up to tell the story when the person wasn't there. But the fact that that's what we were supposed to do. He believed our God. This was our land given to him by God, and that's what we were supposed to do. Another problem text when we're talking about encounter experience and stuff like that is the first couple chapters of Genesis. You know, hey, Genesis chapter 1 and 2, the creation of everything. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, the skies and the earth, okay? And he goes through the whole 6 days of creation. On each day, God creates something different, and then he ends up creating human beings. And then the seventh day, he takes a vacation. All right, he relaxes, puts his feet up, watches Leicester City stink their way to the championship. Remember when Sujastrunsky, the English Championship League, you ever heard of that? You ever hear of Leicester City, the Foxes? Yeah. They stink. They're not team. They're terrible. And watching the other day. Also watching the Jets for the team. Well, this is Philly. Probably like anyway, but yeah, so God creates. Well, then you have chapter 2, where it seems like God has created nothing, or everything's already been created. There's already a garden. God's created a garden. Well, when did that happen? But he hasn't sent any rain for the garden yet. Okay. And he decides to take some of the dirt from the garden and to form a creature, a little creature. An earthling is literally what it should be translated as, an earthling. A thing that comes from the earth, made out of earth. Adamah. Okay, an earthling. And he blows life into it. Well, okay, a number of issues, because there's no act of creation by God at all. Everything is just there already. So what about chapter 1 with the 6 days? And God already created human beings in the first story, but now there are no human beings, and he has to create one. And the creation is different. In chapter 1, God, just wills human beings into existence. He said, let us make humanity in our image, after our likeness. Boom, there's male and female. Okay? But here there's just a male. God creates a male creature out of the earth. And, he recognizes that the male in this Paul is lonely. The guy's lonely. He's alone. He wants a companion. So you think that's where the female comes in, right? The male needs a companion, right? No. God makes them pets. Animals. He makes the animals. That's why God made the animals toward in Genesis chapter 2. Because Adam was lonely. He wanted a friend. Apparently God wasn't enough. They took long walks in the garden together, but you know what, God? You're a great guy, but I still need something else. So yeah, God makes animals. Well, what is Adam supposed to do with animals? I mean, Mr. McKillop, he's a guy who's alone. Some young guy, all by himself. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think, what a young guy, what are they thinking about 24 hours a day? They're hoarding. Adams wants it. He doesn't want to have animals. He wants something that's a companion to him, that he can complement, that complements him. And that's where God is like, a woman. That's what he wants. So God creates a woman from one of Adam's ribs. How that works, I don't know. How you create a creature from just a rib. Maybe God extracted the DNA inside before, made Eve. It's like, and there are people who will, bend themselves into a pretzel, trying to fit this all in with modern science, or just into logic. First chapter, there's male and female. Second chapter, there's nothing. Then there's a male, but not a female. Oh, then we got a female. Okay, so that's a contradiction. Contradiction in how the creation is. Anyway, so how do we explain these things? Well, it's poetry. And I've said this before myself. I had to rethink this myself. I didn't think it was honest. But yeah, obviously, I think there's metaphor going on here. But I think if I could get into the experience of the original writer, and this is where I think Armstrong doesn't do justice, because other people who try to interpret these texts don't do justice to the experience of the original writer. They're afraid that that's what the original writer really meant. Armstrong is afraid that Muhammad really meant that if people attack Islam, you get an army and you go and attack them. Yes, of course you do. You defend your community, which might include killing other people in the name of Islam. Yeah, if they're going to attack Islam. But Armstrong can't handle that, so she doesn't want to enter into that. Maybe that was Muhammad's experience. There are Christians who can't handle the creation stories in Genesis, so they, it's poetry, it's symbol, it's this, that, and the other. Yes, there is a lot of poetry and symbol in it, okay? But if you ask me, do I really think that the original author probably thought that's exactly how it happened? If I'm trying to be true to that person's experience, how people took the text, yes. Because we know from, context. We have archaeology now, and we have other creation stories from the region. We have an idea of the experience of people of the world, of how they experience the world. Okay, ours is different because we have telescopes and astronomers and all sorts of things, and we can see pictures from NASA, and so we know all the stuff that's out there, right? Or at least we know more. We know more than that. But if you're an ancient person just on the surface of the earth, and you look, people conceptualized it as a house, as a building. You had the foundation, you had the land, okay? Then you had the sky, which was the roof of the building, which people seem to think it was the solid roof over the earth. And that all the planets and stars and the sun and the moon that you saw were both beneath that roof, rolling around on the top of the roof, going underneath the earth, at nighttime, and the moon coming out and rolling out on the roof in the evening at nighttime. The sun at nighttime going under the earth for a period of time. But what was above the roof? What surrounded it? What surrounded the land and the roof of the house? Water. Which made perfect sense. Perfect sense. They're not stupid people. These are empiricists. They're as much empirical scientists as today. They were looking and they were thinking, and they knew that water came from above, from the sky. Okay, but where did it come from? Well, it must be above the roof, people reason. And there probably are little doors or holes that open from time to time to let the water from what's above it come down. So that's how you explain rain. But how do you explain like oceans and lakes and springs of water that come up from below? Because they're below, right? They're not coming from above like rain, not falling down on you. Okay? Oh, well, then water must be below as well. So the whole house is surrounded. You've got the floor of the house and the roof, and these kind of keep this area in between where humans live and animals and stuff like that. And then there's water all around. So that's how you explain where the water comes, both from the top and from the bottom. And then there's an underworld where the dead go. Because you want, well, where do the dead go? When people die, or spirits and stuff like that, where are they coming from? Well, they're coming from maybe something that's above, an area that's above the waters, or below the earth. Yeah. That's apparently what the cultures surrounding the Israelites believed in their conception of what they could tell from just having no scientific equipment, but just their own experience and their brains to reason about what these, because they couldn't test it, they didn't have any equipment to test this or know, what they thought, okay? And so Isn't that's no? Well, we look at Genesis, the first couple of the creation stories. Oh, in a lot of ways, it's like that. So I can extrapolate that the ancient writers, I should say, because probably two different writers for these two different stories, but at least the first one had that same conception, because that's how he describes God making the world in Genesis chapter 1. God creates a roof, he builds a roof over the earth, but he's a builder, but he's also different from the other gods because he speaks things into existence. He simply wills them to exist and they exist. He doesn't have to really make them. Until we get to chapter 2, Mr. Lebedinsky, then God has to make the man. So here we seem to have a different story by a different person with a different conception, different experience. Probably also thought that's how it happened too. That's fine. Let's be honest to the writing, I think, to the experience of the person. Does it work for me now? No, it doesn't work for me now. But I have to, whatever experience I'm going to bring to it when I'm reading the scriptures, I think for me to be, I still need to be faithful to what, and respectful of what that probably I think the original person experienced. And then I can build off of that and from my own experience. Well, we know that's not how the world really is because we have different tools and methods, and we can tell we're on a planet orbiting a star. And so, the sun and the moon are not underneath some roof. There is no sky that's a roof. It's an atmosphere. We know these things. So clearly I can't go with the experience of that writer from 4,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago. But it's still the truth of what he's saying and describing. No, that might be true, that it was done by a God. It was created, because science hasn't contradicted that. We don't know where things came from, but we know they didn't come from themselves. I'll see you next week. Oh, remember I changed the date for the paper. See my email. It's a change of date for the paper. See my email. Announcement on Canvas, and I'll give you the hard copy next week.
It's on Wednesday, right?
Huh?
Wednesday?
Yes, sir. Yes, Wednesday. Have a good day, sir. Yes, you didn't eat your pizza.
Thank you. All
right.
It's 3 points to go to for Monday, right?
Huh?
And 3 points to go for Monday.
If you have it in on time, yes. You'll get 3 points.
Yeah, like 3 points to like 85 to 80.
It'll be an 88.
Okay, I told you.
Oh, you won't get 85. It's 50 points for the, so let's say you got a 43.
It's like a point. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it. Okay.
Have a good day.
Famous.
Dooby dooby doo.